I'm delighted now to hand over to the Diocesan Stewardship Enabler, Sophie Hodge, who will give a quick rundown of what's planned and also lead us in a quick prayer.
Great, thanks very much, Dave. Well, the most important thing to say is thank you ever so much, everyone, for being here. Please relax, enjoy this evening. We hope it's a real encouragement to you. If we could have the agenda up, John, that would be great, just so we can give people a bit of a sense of what's going to be happening tonight. Okay, while that agenda PowerPoint is loading, I'll just talk us through. Perfect. So we will begin in prayer in a second. We then have Bishop James has really kindly filmed a generosity reflection for us. So we'll kind of start by thinking about the central theme of what's really important. We're then going to hand over to Grace and Dave, who are part of the national team. I know lots of you will have had something to do with Grace and Dave since this pilot began. We're really lucky to have them back in the county this week, just meeting us, hearing how it's going and offering us lots more support. So that will be great to hear from them. We are then going to be hearing from Lanercost Priory, a church who's already managed to gain over £2,000 worth of donations since they started with their Contactless giving unit in July. So it'll be great to hear from them. We've managed to press gang 3 brave treasurers to have interviews with us, sharing their experiences of using the collect-in and the pay a charity devices. So hopefully that will be a really interesting opportunity for us to learn from their experiences. We'll then be going into breakout rooms, and the purpose of those breakout rooms are for you to have a chance to share your own experiences with other churches, gain some learning from other churches, and we'll be gaining feedback from those breakout conversations, and we'll tell you about that at the time. And then finally, we'll be ending with a question and answer time. Some of you have already emailed us questions, which is fantastic. Hopefully this evening will prompt more questions as well. So if you want to ask your question in person, as Dave said, you can save it till the end, that's fine. If you'd rather stick it in the chat, you can do that at any point this evening, and we'll make sure that it's picked up at the end. So that's where we're going tonight. It should take about an hour, maybe a little bit more. But before we get stuck into that, let's start with a moment of prayer. God, we want to commit this evening to you, and to just start by recognising everything that we're so grateful for. We thank you for every person here tonight. We thank you for their enthusiasm, their wisdom, their experience, their energy that they bring to their roles within their churches. We thank you for the gift that are our church communities, for the relationships we enjoy with each other in our churches. And God, we thank you for each person who gives generously to the work of our churches, whether that's our regular congregations, whether it's our wider community, or whether it's maybe even the tourists and visitors to our county. And we thank you for all the things that you are calling us to do as church, whether that's now or in the future. And we pray that contactless giving income will just be a part of making your work happen. And we just thank you for all the gifts that you give us, and ask that you help us to be wise stewards of all those resources, financial and non-financial. Amen. Okay, so just before we go to the Bishop James film, I just thought it would be good to remind us kind of where we're at the moment. So back in May 2021, so not that long ago, about 5 months ago, we launched a contactless giving pilot. Carlisle Diocese feels really grateful to have been selected for that pilot, because it meant that we actually, as a diocese, received we received 110 contactless giving devices for free, and had the support charges for those devices waived for a year. So that means that we've got almost 50% of Cumbrian churches now owning a contactless giving device, which is amazing. And no other diocese in the country has had this level of investment. So we're really grateful for this opportunity. Obviously, taking on something this big and this new comes with lots of challenges, and I know that many people here tonight will have experienced some of those challenges. But we really genuinely feel that this is a huge opportunity for churches. In my role as stewardship enabler, I'm often asked by PCCs, how can we think about bringing new income into the church? So not just asking our congregations to give more and more, but what new income can we bring to the church? And I really feel that in the long term, this could be part of that answer. So my hope is that the kind of really hard work that you guys are putting in now will pay dividends for years and maybe even decades to come. So specifically why we thought now would be a good time to bring you together. We're almost halfway through the pilot, so we thought that now was a really good moment to bring you together, to give you a bit more support, to kind of learn from one another and hopefully infuse each other for the last 6 months of the pilot. We're also really conscious that Christmas is just around the corner, so we wanted to give you some good ideas of how to make the most of your machines in the lead up to Christmas. And also we knew that it had been a challenge in some ways for many of you, and so we wanted an opportunity for you to be able to talk together and to be able to offer some encouragement, but we also wanted to use this week to do a lot of one-to-one support, which is what we've been doing around the county over the last few days. So that's where we're at. That's why we thought now would be a good time to do this. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Bishop James for a time of quiet and reflection before we get stuck into the meat of this evening.
Disgusting, muttered one disgruntled parishioner after a sermon I'd preached on giving in the church where I was the vicar. Clergy shouldn't be allowed to talk of such things, and especially not in church. I found myself wondering what she would have made of Jesus, who said more about money even than he did about the kingdom of God. So he obviously felt it was rather important, as too did St. Paul, who wrote at length in 2 Corinthians 8 and 9 about generosity. In his view, there are 5 key marks of Christian generosity, and all of them apply directly to us today. In the first place, it is spiritual. Just as we love because he first loved us, so too we're generous because he first has been generous to us. Michael Herr-Duke puts this beautifully in a poem called Break of Glory. Our God has spent himself and come alive to save us who would miser up our joys. So the main reason for any generosity we may show is gratitude for his generosity in Christ towards us. In that sense, it's a test of our love for him, just as it was for the Macedonians in 2 Corinthians, who were urged by St. Paul to give themselves first to the Lord. In the Christian vocabulary, self is a 4-letter word, which can only be transformed through attachment to the word giving. And generous self-giving is part of the fruit of the Spirit. In the lead up to COP26, I saw a film about great chunks breaking off the ice cap in Greenland. You couldn't hack them off, not that you'd want to. That happens only when the temperature rises. Not good for the environment, but it is what needs to happen to us as the Holy Spirit melts our hearts through the warmth of God's love. As people have often remarked, our problem in the Church of England is not financial, but spiritual, not least in this diocese where our level of giving per capita is one of the lowest in the whole country. Second, generosity is mutual. We're all in this together, to coin a phrase, and sharing our resources is a ministry which every one of us is called upon to exercise. A third mark of Christian generosity is that it is unconditional. Paul asked the Corinthians to be generous, but it's a request, not a command. As with our parish office scheme, it must be voluntary or not at all. What really matters is not the amount, but the attitude, so there's no minimum wealth requirement for generous giving, as we know from the well-known story of the widow's mite, nor are any conditions attached to generous giving. For instance, None of those annoying T's and C's which are read at such breakneck speed after the advertisements on Classic FM. The Macedonians may well have thought that the theology of the Jerusalem Christians was a bit dubious and their financial management a bit incompetent, but they gave generously nonetheless. Fourth, Christian generosity is sacrificial. If it doesn't cost us anything, that probably means it doesn't matter much. And a big part of that cost, which is truly sacrificial, is being willing to surrender control. As with our time, so with our money. We have to recognize that it is God's, not mine. So the real question is not how much of our money we give, it is how much of God's money we keep. And the starting point for the Macedonians wasn't how little I can get away with. They began with the question, how much can I give? And for St. Paul, that was a sure sign of God's grace at work in their lives. Finally, generosity is beneficial to the giver as well as the recipient. Recent research indicates that true happiness comes from giving and serving, not from receiving and being served. Hence an old Norwegian proverb which goes, "The hand that gives is never empty." Generous giving is quite simply an investment in God's mission, and in the divine economy, dividends are paid in individual lives for years to come. It was Winston Churchill who famously said, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." So often we're like young birds learning to fly. We cling to the branch which represents safety, not daring to believe that our wings will work in the open air below. But giving generously is the air into which and for which we were born. And Jesus is the parent bird, urging us to open our wings, to jump off the branch and to fly.
Our thanks go to Bishop James for that film. You probably appreciate having listened to it. He had a stinking cold that day when we filmed, so thanks so much to him for stepping in and doing that. Okay, so now it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Grace Emmett and Dave Stout from the Church of England's National Giving Team. We'll spend the next 10 minutes or so explaining how the rollout of the contactless devices has gone across the diocese to date. Okay, guys.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, well, it's really good to be with you all virtually this evening, and it's been lovely to meet some of you again this time around while we're up and having met some of you back in May. Just to introduce myself, anyone who I haven't had contact with, I'm the National Digital Giving Manager for the Church of England. So I work on different digital giving projects, which is things like this, contactless, and also working on equipping churches with online giving. And Sophie introduced a little bit about the pilot at the beginning, just as a bit of a refresher for the context within which your particular church finds itself, which is that we've given out about 110 units across the diocese. This is the first diocese that we've worked with on this scale, and is part of a broader national rollout that we'll be doing of contactless devices across the next 2 or so years. And I suppose we were particularly keen to work in Cumbria because of the breadth of churches across the diocese, the different demographics of churches, from sort of urban city centres to places in the Lake District, who got a really different range of people coming into those buildings, and who might be looking to give for different reasons. So a great opportunity for us to see how contactless works in those different contexts. And you might know already that we've tried 3 different devices. So we've got the Collect In More, which most of you have, the Pay a Charity A920 Plus, and the Good With devices, which a handful of the churches have. So that's just a little bit of a sort of background on the pilot and why we did that. And I suppose in terms of thinking about why contactless is so important, we've seen that trajectory of card overtaking cash payments in the last few years. So partly a lot of people are just carrying less cash these days, but also we know that people tend to give more when they're able to give by card. Research in the charity sector suggests it's about 3 times as much as they might give by cash. This is such an important mechanism for churches to be able to make the most of if they want to, and grateful for all of you taking part and helping us learn from this together before we look at doing this more widely. So we just wanted to share a little bit about how it's going so far, really, because you'll have a sense of how it's working for you in your own church, but thought you might like to see where that slots into the bigger picture. So I think the next bullet point on the slide is about the donations raised to date, if I can remember rightly, if John's able to put that up for us. Feeling like that should do a little drum roll or something at this point. There we go. Yeah, so we've raised over £32,000 so far since the pilot launched at the end of May, which we're just so encouraged by. I think that's really phenomenal, and particularly given the various challenges that we've had, both sort of logistically in terms of how do we give out these devices, how do we train churches well with them, but also just thinking about coming out of lockdown. Of course, at the end of May, we were still contending with various social restrictions, and I know that some of you won't have opened your churches more fully until sort of middle of July. And of course, we're still contending with social distancing and thinking about how we sort of go back to, or not really go back to normal, but experience church as the new normal. So I think that's really incredible, and we're really encouraged by that, and just want to say thank you, I suppose, for investing time and getting to grips with these mechanisms, and conscious that there have been challenges, but I hope that you're as encouraged by that figure as I am. John, could I have the next bullet point? And so the average donation is about £7.18. I don't know where that compares to you in terms of what the average cash donation might be. I think that roughly fits that statistic that I shared at the beginning in terms of contactless donations being about 3 times more than a cash donation. Of course, that'll be different in every church, but that might be true for you as well. And it's worth saying that we've raised about £4,000 as well through online giving. Some of you will have embraced that at the same time alongside your contactless device. So it's great to see those two things working together, particularly through the use of things like QR codes and working out how they can support the use of a contactless device. So one more point on this. So about 80% of the units that we've given out so far have been used in some capacity. For some, that's just taken one donation. For some, that's being used every week. And we're hovering at about 35% of devices being used on a weekly basis. So we're sort of trying to look at, of course, some units will just be used at particular events. So, not anticipating every device is going to get used every week or anything like that. But are there things that we can do to help support you to use it more, or are there logistical challenges that are preventing you using the device more, that sort of thing, which is partly why we've been here this week, just keen to hear from your experience and how we can help support you as we look at the next 6 months of this pilot. And what you can see on the screen here is an average of the amount of donations taken per device so far that's been active. So you've got collecting on the left and then the pay a charity devices on the right, and I'll come to GWD in a minute. And then that orange column is showing, based on the sort of current level of donations, what might we expect a device that's being used to take over the course of the pilot term. And I think it's worth pointing out that this doesn't include, obviously, Christmas, which is coming up very soon, or any other big event like Easter. So I think we'd expect that will actually probably be higher in reality, because we know that those are really big moments sort of within the life of the church. But I just thought it's worth sharing with you in terms of a snapshot of where we are now, where we think the trajectory of the pilot might be going. And in terms of the Goodwood devices, we're anticipating they'll probably take about £2,500, £3,000 over the course of the year. They are typically in churches that have got very high footfall, so getting lots of visitors. So they slightly skew the averages of our other 2 units, which are the primary ones we've given out in this pilot. But I hope that's helpful for you, and it might be worth thinking about where's your church sitting at the moment in terms of your device, if you've been using it. And if not, maybe this is some encouragement for thinking about the sort of donations that you might be able to take in the next 6 months or so, and keen to help you think about how best to do that. So I guess looking ahead at what's coming up, thinking about Christmas and how to use contactless well, particularly in that period of time. Dave, my colleague from the national team, is just going to share some top tips for using your device over the festive period.
Hello there. Yeah, my name's Dave Stouts, and I'm the Regional Giving Advisor for the North of England. So my role is to support dioceses across the North. And so it's been really great to get to know a load of the parishes up here in Carlisle Diocese, as we've been doing the training back in May, and then again today and this week. And yeah, we really want to help you make the most of your devices as we move into the Advent season. So During our drop-in sessions that we've been running this week, we've been giving out this Christmas contactless checklist, and we will send around a digital copy of this to everyone who's within the pilot as well. So you'll have a list of this. But I wanted to just go through this now to get you thinking about how, with just a few weeks to go until those sort of services or events really start to ramp up, how you can make the most of your contactless device. So the first one is don't forget to decorate your device. Quite a lot of these points really boil down to making sure that people know where your device is and how to use it, and are reminded to use it. And actually, whilst you're decorating the church ready for Christmas, why not also decorate your device? Put some fairy lights on it, some tinsel, some holly and ivy, whatever it might be, to fit in with the themes that you're having across your church. But make it stand out, help it draw the eye towards it. So that's the first one. Don't forget to decorate. Secondly, is thinking about where people will be when they're in the church. Obviously, at Christmas we get lots of visitors, or we hold sort of slightly alternative events like a Christmas fete or something like that. So where do people congregate when they come into your building, particularly when they're not used to it? Have a think about the sort of the dynamic of your space, and where would be the best place to put your unit, your contactless device, given that there will be so many visitors and they might not move or congregate in the sort of the same way as your regular congregation members. Number 3 is all about reminding people to give. And this is something that we should always try to remember to do, not just at Christmas, of course, but because there will be so many visitors, why not try and give that little bit of encouragement, that little nudge to get that generosity flowing? I truly believe that, people are generous and they like to be generous. And so let's give them that opportunity by saying, why not use our contactless device or QR code or any of the other ways that people can give to your church at this time. Number 4 is about rotas. Not another one, I know, but in this case, probably quite important. Lots of services, lots of events. So why not think about perhaps training somebody else up or a number of people up to be able to just sort of manage and look after the device during the festive season. It might not be that they have to stand by the device, but just making sure that they're the person who's going to turn it off, turn it on, make sure that it's working properly, encourage people to use it, that sort of thing. And if you start thinking about who that might be now, then you've got a couple of weeks ready to train them before December. Number 5 is particularly for churches who have collecting devices. One of the great things about collecting is that you can log into multiple of the collecting devices. So if there's a parish nearby you that also has a collecting device, and you're doing a big event, then you might be able to borrow their device and log into both, and then you've sort of doubling up with the devices or maybe even more will help generate more of that income. So do have a think about that and how you can share those devices in your locality. Of course, we also often like to put on refreshments, maybe some mulled wine or mince pies, and this is what number 6 is all about. Why not use your contactless device as a way of helping people donate to sort of cover some of the cost of that refreshment? Put it next to where you're serving your refreshments perhaps, and whilst you're getting that mulled wine poured, you can say, oh, why not, if you'd like to, you can give a little donation, and make sure that on your device you've put numbers that would be suitable in that setup. And finally, number 7 is about how you use your device to raise money potentially for other charities at this time. I know lots of people like to raise money for other charities during the festive season, and you can absolutely use your contactless device to do this, but just make sure that when you do that you're making sure that everybody is aware that when they're using that device that donation is going to whichever charity it's going to. So it might be that you're doing a split plate, so 50% to the church, 50% to a different charity, or it might be that you're doing a whole service like a Christingle service. where the whole donation will be going to charity, another charity that isn't your church. So just put a sign or something very clear on your device that was saying that that donation is going to another charity. So those are our 7 pointers on our Christmas contactless checklist. And if you start thinking about those now in the next couple of weeks, then you can get that all prepared and ready for the festive season. As I said, we'll be sending that out digitally after the event. The webinar, and if you come to one of our drop-ins, then you can pick up one of these checklists. So that's our Christmas checklist, and I think I'm not entirely sure who I'm passing on to at this point, but David, it's probably you.
Just as a complete aside, people may also like to know that the fact that £32,000 has been raised so far by the contactless giving devices has actually made it to Parliament. It was raised in the House of Commons by Neil Hudson as part of the Church Commissioners debate recently. So it's the success has been heard in London. Okay, so thanks to Grace and Dave for that. We've just heard about the benefits that contactless giving presents for our churches. Well, Sophie and I have had the privilege of going down to Lanercost Priory to discover how their units help them financially. And here's an opportunity to find out a little bit more.
Hi, Sophie. Good to see you.
Yeah,
welcome to Lanercost.
Thank you. Should we go and have a look at your contactless giving?
Yeah.
Great. Oh, it looks lovely. And then you've got the optional donation amount.
Chris, could you tell us a bit about the type of device you have here and why you thought it would be a good thing for Lanercost Priory?
It's a freestanding unit. It connects to the internet via Wi-Fi, and because that actually getting Wi-Fi in was quite an issue here, but we managed it. And it can be used effectively by anyone. We'd been thinking for a while about getting a cashless machine in anyway, because we actually get a lot of visitors through during the course of a year, and they like to make donations, and they also purchase things from our sales tables. And we were finding more and more that people were saying, can we use a card, because they weren't carrying cash. And so we were already looking to get one when the Church of England decided that Carlisle would act as a bit of a guinea pig.
Could you tell me how much financial difference having a contactless machine has made to the Priory?
Well, we've had it in since sometime in July, and I suppose the start was a bit slow because we'd only really started getting visitors in again. But over the last few months, it's taken over £2,000.
And what does that mean for you as a Priory, having that extra income?
This is a large church in a deeply rural area, and so the number of people involved in taking care of it is low. The number of people who would put money in the collections at services is quite low, and so we really rely a lot on visitor income to actually be able to pay our way. So in the last normal year we had something like 53% of our total income came from visitors, and so being able to increase that amount is quite important, both in terms of being able to pay our way to pay the parish offer, which is really quite important from the point of view of being able to keep priests on the ground out here. But it also allows us to think about other things that we need to do here.
Do you feel like the contactless machine has been extra additional income, or do you feel like it's detracted from your cash donations, or has it even improved your cash donations?
Had we been in a normal year, then we could have made really good comparisons back historically. But given that we've not had many overseas visitors, for example, our income during the last few months has been probably, if anything, slightly up on a normal year. So we think, yes, it is definitely increasing the amount that we're bringing in.
if there's churches listening to this who have a contactless machine but haven't quite got their heads around how to use it or got it out the box, what would your message be for them?
Well, if it's one that you're going to leave unattended to take donations or whatever, then think where you put it. Here in this church, we'd already got quite a visible box for donations, and you can see in it the amount of money that people are giving. And we've put the machine next to that. So actually having that box there with visible money in it actually does encourage people to give the right sort of amounts.
Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. I hope that's been interesting and encouraging for people. Thank you.
I would hope so too.
Our thanks go to Chris Angus. I think Chris might actually be with us tonight for taking the time to film with us. Okay, for the next 15 minutes or so, there's a chance to hear from other Cumbrian churches as to their experience of contactless giving. Many of you here tonight may well be aware of what one of these looks like. It's a collecting unit. There are 73 churches across the county that have been provided with one of these. And I'm delighted to say that we're joined now by two treasurers who can explain more about their collecting experiences. So that's Jane Nicholson from St James's, Whitehaven, and David Graham from St Lawrence, Crosby Ravensworth. David, if you're there, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Can you put your video on, David?
I would love to put the video on, but it's not wanting to play tonight.
Okay.
And my wife tells me it's not been playing today, so
not to worry.
that.
Not to worry. Jane, I'll come to you first, if I may. James's is obviously, it's one of the diocese's largest churches within an urban setting, one of the county's largest conurbations. Where have you seen most success in the use of your contactless giving device?
So we've used the contact collecting device at all of our Sunday and midweek services. We've also had it out at all of our occasional services, so baptisms, weddings and funerals. We also used it for our gift day and building appeal. So we've found that at our regular services, I've got probably 3 regular people who used to give by cash, but now prefer to use contactless giving. Baptisms, we've seen a reasonably good uptake on it. So a quarter of the donations that we're getting at the end of baptism services is now through the contactless giving. And a few people chose to use it for the gift day as a difference to, as an alternative to giving cash or a cheque. So they're the sort of 3 areas that we've used it.
Do you think the baptismal side of things, that's a generational side of things potentially?
I think it is. I mean, our congregation, are probably well over 70, most of them. They like putting cash in an envelope and giving that way. But as you say, for the baptisms, we've got a lot of younger families coming through who are more used to sort of using the contactless, and as you say, they are probably the people that are less likely to have cash in their pocket to put on a collection plate at the end of the service. Okay,
I know you've talked about the fact that maybe 2 or 3 people from the congregation have chosen to actively use it. Are you able to talk about how much money this may have raised for you as a church?
So in total, I think we've taken about £1,250 through the collecting. 700 of that is for the midweek and Sunday services, £200 for baptisms, and the rest was from the gift day.
Great. So that's not an insignificant amount. What kind of difference will that make to you as a church?
I mean, I think in reality, this has offered people a choice in the way they give. Most of that money, I believe, we would have got anyway. It's just people changing the way. So I suppose the only real extra money that I could say we probably generated through the tin would be the money from the baptism. So, you know, £200.
Okay. But presumably there's the benefit of convenience and flexibility.
There is, now. Yes. There is, yes, yeah, and I think, you know, those that are using it are finding that convenience, you know, a good thing.
Jane, thanks so much for your help there. David, St Lawrence's is obviously quite a different. It's quite different in terms of setting, a village setting, though not in terms of the size of the church building. I believe when we were talking yesterday, you told me that it's known as the Cathedral of Westmoreland, if I remember rightly. Where do you think you've seen most success in using your contactless giving device?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Crosby Ravensworth, it's got a population of 250, and even the parish is only 1,200. 90% I've worked out of our money is coming through visitors. The church is open 9 till 5, 365 days a year. It always has been. We've, at the same time as putting the tin in, the machine in, collecting more, we also signed on the roadside to say that the church is open for shelter, for obviously for anyone wanting to go in, but for water refills. It's got free Wi-Fi. It's got a toilet. So anything to attract people into the church. We always did get visitors, and we used to get quite a good collection through the wall safe in the church. We're still getting the same amount of cash through the wall safe, but of the about £1,070 we've raised so far, about 90% of that is coming from visitors, and it's new money. And we actually want to tap into even more of that next year, and we've got plans to do more in the church during the tourist season. So we're sort of using the church for a different purpose, but raising money that's new to the church.
So when did you actually get your collecting device, David?
We installed it about on the 25th of May was when we actually installed it. We had problems getting Wi-Fi and getting a connection into the church. It's one of the advantages of Crosby Ravensworth. There's no mobile signal. So actually having free Wi-Fi actually attracts people. So yes, the 25th of May we got it in. So basically, in reality, 5 months.
Yeah, so over 5 months, you've drawn in over £1,000, £1,070, which is, again, it's not insubstantial, is it?
It's fantastic. I mean, it's a real boost to church finances. And you know, the big thing is it's not just coming from, it's not, you know, locals, it's other people coming in to see the church. It's a beautiful church, and it's a very big church, you know, and we can squeeze 600 people into it. So hence the Cathedral of Westmoreland. It's an enormous building, but it also takes a lot of money to run. So anything helps.
Yeah, and drawing on our conversation yesterday, and we talked about just average congregation sizes, and you were saying is your average congregation around 20 or so?
We're doing well when we get 20, yeah.
Okay, so you've got a building there which could take 600. It's drawing in 20 people, so presumably this cash will really help with upkeep, etc.
It does. You know, it's a very big church, and it's used by some of the other churches in the area for in particular farming community funerals. You know, we've had a couple of occasions where we've had absolutely stowed out. So it is used for certain events. You know, from the point of view of collections from services, very little of the service collection comes through the machine, because you can obviously look and see when the donations have been made. And I mean, last Sunday we had a Leven's Choir and raised just short of £600 £10 of that came through the card machine.
Okay.
So, you know, the vast majority is visitors.
Right. Okay. David, although I can't see you, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Yeah, apologies for that, but no, I have in the background been trying to sort it, but it just doesn't want to play.
Really appreciate your time, and also to Jane. Sophie, over to you.
Right, so we there's one more device that we haven't directly spoken about yet, and that's the Pay a Charity device. So I'm hoping Adrian's here. Are you here, Adrian?
I am indeed, yes.
Fantastic. So Adrian has a quirk that his internet drops out for 2 minutes every evening. So I was terrified that that was going to be this 2 minutes, but it's not. So that's great.
It's already been and gone.
So Adrian, you've been using a different device to the ones we've talked about so far. You've had the Pay a Charity device. And that's obviously a device that many people here will be familiar with. It's a smaller device. It's a very easy to use device, but it can work offline, so you don't need data or Wi-Fi. Can you tell us a bit about where you've been using your machine, how you've been using it?
Yeah, well, a bit of background. At Brampton, our church doesn't have a phone line or any broadband connection, so we couldn't go for the systems that need internet connection. The Pay a Charity device has the advantage of using the mobile phone network, and the signal we get in church seems to be adequate to connect directly all the time. We've been using it in all the services. It's been available at the back near the entrance and exit to the church. We've publicised in our weekly news sheet that we can take card payments, that we can do online giving as well. So we're sort of publicising all the relevant routes for giving for people. The main giving really is members of the congregation, I think, rather than visitors. The disadvantage with the Pay a Charity thing, the unit, is because it's so small, it's easily portable. So it's not one you could really leave in church, because somebody might decide they could take it away with them. So it's only when the church is manned. So it's not ideal for using for casual visitors who come into the church during the weeks. The church is open from 9 till 5 every day for visitors. So at the moment, with visitors, we're having to rely on cash donations. Brilliant. But one of the advantages of it is being portable. If we want to do a church fete or something, or some other event, we can take it with us. It doesn't have to be tied to the church.
That's great. And it's really interesting as well to hear all the different ways that you've kind of been promoting contactless and online giving, just really getting the message out there. That's really helpful to hear. Do you know how much difference the Pay a Charity device has made for you financially?
Well, up to the up to the beginning of October, we'd taken £317.57 on it, which, looking at the statistics you showed earlier, is actually in line with the average for the collecting system. So I think we're doing reasonably well, but I'd like to see it being used more and being available for visitors. I think one of the things we have to do is remind the clergy when they're doing the notices to point out that we do have card reading facilities, perhaps not for the general congregation in Sunday services because everybody's aware of it, but for things like funerals, baptisms and so on. I mean, we had a funeral this week where there was about 250 people in church, but it wasn't, the card reader wasn't mentioned, so it was there, but it didn't get used.
Yeah, so you've already got a lot of things in place in terms of promoting the machine, but actually some more things that you could be doing.
Yes.
So that's really good to hear. So £350 in the space of the last few months isn't actually bad at all. So it's, you know, it's that kind of drip little bits of income coming in consistently. What difference will that make for you as a church?
Well, any extra income is well received. At the moment, income is slightly less than expenditure, So any means that we can get money in from visitors and so on is welcome. And I think we need to look at all options. Card reading, obviously, card reading and phone reading is now sort of becoming more the norm. We've got to move with the times and make sure that giving is available.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Adrian.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sophie. Hopefully you found what's just been said of real use for your local context. But obviously, I wonder what your experience is of your contactless giving units so far. So this evening, we just want to give you the opportunity to discuss amongst yourselves how things are going in your church. In a minute, hopefully through the wonders of Zoom, we'll break into groups of 4, and we'd ask that you please consider the following questions, which you should all hopefully now see on your screen. Where have you seen success so far with your contactless giving? What are some of the challenges you are facing? And what could the diocese and the national team do to better support you with your contactless device? Now, it may well be worth taking a photo of the screen if you've got your mobile to hand, or if you can take a screen grab of it, great. Or alternatively, if you just want to write those questions down with paper and pen over the next minute or so, prior to you going out into breakout groups, we will look to broadcast the questions to your breakout groups, but they only appear fleetingly. So if people can just make a note of those 3 questions. Where have you seen success so far with your contactless giving? What are some of the challenges you're facing? And what could the diocese and the national team do to better support you with your contactless device? And we'd really appreciate it if one member of your group would be able to just keep some very brief notes as to the main points that you raised in your conversations, and feed that back to us via the email, which hopefully will appear on the screen now. And the next slide. There we go. Again, this address will be posted in the chat facility when you return. So if you can make note of it via the chat facility as well. Okay, so 10 minutes or so in breakout groups, and we'll see you back here shortly. Thank you. So hopefully everybody who left has returned. Just before we go into a time of Q&A, we did just want to point out it is now 8:30. We've been together for an hour. If people feel that they've got other things to do and they want to leave, totally understand if that's the case. If people are happy to stay on for another 50 minutes or so for Q&A, again, that would be great to have you here with us. Just to remind people, if John, you could bring up that slide, please. If you've been able to keep a few notes of the conversations you've had and the main points raised, again, if you could just kindly email just some bullet points to stewardship@carlislediocese.org.uk. We'd really appreciate it. Okay, right, so now on to a time for question and answers. Again, just to reiterate, if you have a question and you want to put it in the chat facility, please do. We're going to lose a PowerPoint slide and go to full screen. I will endeavour to keep across the screens if people raise hands virtually or even physically. And we'll try and come to you as best we can. I can see a hand raised by Jean Hill. Jean, if you unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'll lower my hand as well, get it out of the way. I wanted to ask this question just to jump in case I forget it. Is it possible to tether the collecting to a mobile phone so that it can be used either in the church hall where we don't have Wi-Fi, or the situation we've got at the moment where our phone was cut off by BT. So we are without phone at the moment. So could we tether it to a mobile?
Grace and Dave.
Yeah, I can't this one. Yes, absolutely. So it's just a case of enabling your personal hotspot on that mobile phone device, and then you'd connect the Collectin to it, just like you would a normal Wi-Fi network. Actually, you'll see it appear as Jean's iPhone or whatever, and you put in the password in the normal way. So that should, if you've got reception, yeah, that'll work fine for you.
Oh, thank you.
A question probably for you, Dave. It's coming on the chat facility. Can you make the Christmas banner backgrounds available to everyone?
Yes, so we've created for the Collectins, we've created a couple of sort of template Christmas campaigns, and we've created a video and a guide to help you create those with all the files as well. So we'll send those round either in follow-up to this webinar or in our next email that goes round. With all the information on how to put those campaigns on. We've got a one that fits in with the National Church of England kind of Christmas campaign, At the Heart of Christmas. That's what that calls. We've got one that meets that. Another one which is just a bit more sort of Christmas generic. So it's quite simple to set up. But yeah, we have a walkthrough video that makes it that answers how you actually do that.
Great, thanks, Dave. Vera Nicholson, you've got a question.
Unmute. Hi, yeah, I did send it in to the stewardship email about the gift aid. When we collect gift aid via the Contactless, when will that be added to our account, please?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Vera. I don't know which device you've got. All the three.
What were the names of them?
Collectin or Pay a Charity, probably you've got. Yeah,
it's that one.
Yeah, so all three of the devices we've given in the pilot can do on-screen gift aid capture. So you're probably familiar with this, but it gives the opportunity for the person donating to put their different address details in. You still need to process that gift aid claim yourself. It's not automated by any of the providers. So for you, for the Collectin, the way that you do this is to log into Give a Little online, where you create campaigns and so on. If you go to reports, you can access that information there. We've put together user guides for each of the devices, which talks about that aspect of the online portal, how you access gift aid reports. Those of you who've met us in person this week would have got a hard copy, but we'll send that out via email as well. That'll go in that next newsletter. And Sophie and John have got lots of hard copies. So they might be willing to post them to you if you ask them very nicely, or if you pop into the diocesan office. So if you'd like a hard copy, we can arrange one for you as well. But that will kind of go through in a little bit more detail how you access the gift aid information to make the claim.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
And Graham Fraser.
Yep. Hi. I just want to follow up on Jean's point and the point we had in our breakout group. We've struggled for various reasons getting the connection with the Collectin, so it's not been a great success for us this summer. But what we've been trying to do is and it hasn't got a SIM functionality because we thought we had a good, strong internet connection, which we weren't able to connect to the Collectin. And I've been trying to tether some of the mobile phone that we have to the Collectin, and without success. And therefore, when we heard about the payer system, I was quite enthused, because we have lots of outside events and actually we have lots of off-site events. So that ability to tether a mobile signal to the Collectin is really quite important. We've been unable to do that. Now I'm attending the session in Kendal 11:30 on Friday, so I'm looking for some advice or at least instruction as to how to connect the Collectin to the mobile phone, because I think that will be materially beneficial to what we do. And we had this issue in our breakout group where people didn't necessarily have the ability to tether the device, and I think that's an important aspect. If you can tether the device, you can then take it anywhere and get money anywhere, really.
Thanks.
I don't know what people's thoughts are.
Thanks for that feedback, Dave.
Can I just respond to that, Dave? So with the collecting devices, there's a SIM card installed that you can then sort of get set up so that you can connect through 3G and eventually 4G when it's coming, so that you can connect directly to the mobile networks. So rather than necessarily having to tether, that does incur a small charge, for a sort of annual charge. And quite a few people have been using that functionality. But maybe one of the things that we could do, either as the national team or Sophie and John, is to do some videos and guides around connecting devices to a sort of a tethered system, just to kind of walk through that process. But Graham, we can chat on Friday morning specifically about your situation. But yeah, if we can look to create some of those guides and videos about tethering, because clearly that's something that's popping up for a number of people.
Thanks, Dave. A question that we've had in prior to tonight's event comes from St Bees, and that was, how do you run campaigns on the contactless machine? Sophie, you might want to touch on this.
Okay, so yeah, campaigns is something that you might want to consider doing. So a campaign allows people to make donations, not just to your generic church, but maybe for a specific appeal. So it might be a new roof fund or an organ fund or the Children's Society. What the manufacturers are telling us is that actually sometimes people will give more money if it's for a specific appeal. So campaigns are something that you might want to consider. If you have a pay a charity device, the massive advantage of the pay a charity devices is they are really simple. You just turn them on and start using them. So they're really easy, which is great. The slight disadvantage is you can't actually do campaigns in a kind of technical way, but you can still use them in the same way. So you might decide that it's a Christingle service and you want all of the donations for that service to go towards the Children's Society, or you might be holding a fundraiser one day for your new roof. All you have to do is make it really clear to people that that's where the donations are going, and then using the reporting, any donations that are made on that day, is for that specific campaign. If you have a collecting device, it's a case of logging on to Give a Little, where you set up your initial, it was called a campaign, where you set up your initial campaign for the general church giving. You can also set up a second, a third, a fourth campaign for whatever you want on the Give a Little portal, and then that will appear on your main screen, and so people will then be able to choose to give to St Mary's Church or to give to the new organ appeal. So it's via the Give a Little. Like Grace said, we do have these new instruction manuals that we can post out to people if they would find that helpful. So email us if that's would help you. If you have a GWD machine, it's a case of emailing GWD, telling them what you want, and they magically do it all for you. So it's super easy. Just tell them what the campaign is, what you want the donation amounts to be, and it will magically appear. So yeah, I think that answers the question, unless Dave or Grace want to add anything. No.
Great, thanks, Sophie. A final practical question that we'll throw to Mr. Christmas, that's Dave Stout. Bear in mind he was talking about how to decorate devices. Sarah Carter asks, decorating a device is difficult with pay a charity as someone needs to be available to use it. Have you got any tips?
Yeah, that's a good point about the pay a charity device. They're not quite so simple to decorate, I suppose. I guess in a sense it depends on where you have your device. But if you can't decorate the device, you can decorate around the device. So putting a kind of a seasonally themed poster nearby, or some decorations around it, or You know, if you've got the device in front of a board, you know, again, theming the board around it as well. So it's just sort of trying to draw the eye towards the device. That's what you're trying to do. So whether it's the device itself, or whether it's what's sort of accompanying the device around the device, it's just trying to get those people who, it may be the first time in church, it certainly will be the first time in church for quite a while, trying to get them to see that there's something new. And that, along with the fact that there would be encouragement from the front or in the notices that you can give that way, will help them to be able to see where the device is and to hopefully give generously.
Great, thanks, Dave. Just to say, if people here have think of questions post-event, please just send them through to the stewardship@carlislediocesan.org.uk email, and we will do our level best to answer them as quickly as we possibly can. Thanks so much to everyone who's participated in that time of Q&A. Sophie.
Unmute, I knew I'd do that one time. Okay, well, just a couple of things to wrap up with. We are really grateful for all you've done, all of the energies that you've put into getting Contactless Giving going. We would be even more grateful if you could spare 5 minutes of your time filling in a survey for us. This is really important learning. As you heard, we're wanting to talk about sharing this rollout. Sorry, I'm trying to get the link at the same time as talking to you. We're wanting to roll this out to other parts of the country, so your learning is really valued. I am just putting a link in the chat now. If people do have 5 minutes and would be willing to fill in this survey with your experiences, that would really help us. And then the other thing is, we have these hard booklets. We've sent PDF guides in the past, but we now have physical guides. If you want to come to Church House and pick them up, we will have a stack there. If you want us to post them out to you, drop us an email, stewardship@carlislediocesan.org.uk, and we'll be able to get those sent out to you too. But I think that's all from me.
Brilliant, thanks, Sophie. And just to remind people that we have recorded the session and that it will be on the diocesan YouTube as quickly as possible. It'll be shared on the e-news, and we just encourage people to share that within their church communities as widely as you can. So it just goes for me to thank you all again for attending, and particular thanks to Jane, to David, and to Andrew, to Adrian, sorry, for their interviews. Equally to Chris Angus and Bishop James for their willingness to be filmed. To Dave and Grace from the National Giving Team, who've joined us from their hotel after what's been a busy day touring this wonderful county, providing further updates and training around the contactless unit. And a huge thank you to Sophie and also to John Thompson, who none of you will have seen, but he's called admin account on this screen. John, who's now a part of the stewardship team and has played a blinder running all the technology for this evening's event. So thank you for that. Have a great evening, or the rest of the evening, and hopefully we can all settle down and watch Shetland now. Thanks so much.